Hello, everyone. I am Eduardo Olivo, and I use he, him pronouns, and I serve as Associate Director for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at the Department of Residence Education and Housing Services under the direction of Dr. Ray Gasser, and within the new Division of Student Life and Engagement under the leadership of Benny Gore. Thanks to Ray and Benny for their unwavering support for this event. I welcome you all to the 2022 virtual Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Community Conversation as one of the featured programs of the 42nd Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. commemoration at Michigan State University. I know that many were looking forward to joining the annual MLK Community Unity Dinner in person as a time to share an amazing meal in community and honor Dr. King's life and legacy. However, as this global pandemic continues to rage, we had to make the difficult and necessary decision to shift the celebration to a virtual platform. Today, I am honored to be your co-host for this afternoon's event, along with Christine Sau, the Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer for ASMSU. So first, I would like to honor our Indigenous and Native community and pay respects to them and the land that we're privileged to live on. Today, we collectively acknowledge that Michigan State University occupies the ancestral, traditional, and contemporary lands of the Anishinaabe, Three Fires Confederacy of Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi people. In particular, MSU resides on land ceded in the 1819 Treaty of Saginaw. We recognize, support, and advocate for the sovereignty of Michigan's 12 federally recognized Indian nations, for historically indigenous communities in Michigan, for indigenous individuals and communities who live here now, and for those who are forcibly removed from their homelands. By offering this land acknowledgement, we affirm indigenous sovereignty and will work to hold Michigan State University more accountable to the needs of American Indian and indigenous peoples. Now, let me share some guiding principles related to the Zoom webinar space that has been created for this conversation today. First, all audience participants are muted and videos are turned off to create an environment free of distractions. However, feel free to use the chat function to share thoughts, comments, and questions directly with the hosts, Christine Sau, myself, at your discretion throughout the program. We will be monitoring the chat function for your comments as they come in. Secondly, video is only enabled for presenters, also to limit distractions. Third, during the questions and answers piece after our keynote speaker presentation, please also use the Q&A feature to submit your questions to Dr. Lomax. Our moderator, Stratton Lee, will attempt to ask as many questions as possible within the provided range of time. And lastly, if you're experiencing lagging or skipping, I suggest that you use your computer to access video while simultaneously dialing in by phone audio support. So thanks again for with your virtual presence today, for honoring us with your presence today. Now it is my privilege to introduce you to Dr. Samuel Stanley, L. Stanley, MSU's president. President Samuel L. Stanley Jr., MD, has moved decisively since his August 2019 arrival at Michigan State University. Among his top priorities are ensuring a safe, respectful, and welcoming campus, advancing student success and well-being, growing academic and research excellence, increasing diversity, equity, and inclusion, and continuing MSU's extraordinary regional and global impact. Born in Seattle, he earned a Bachelor's of Arts from the University of Chicago and his medical degree from Harvard Medical School. He completed a fellowship in infectious diseases at Washington University in St. Louis. A distinguished biomedical researcher, Stanley was one of the nation's top recipients of support from the National Institutes of Health for his research on emerging infectious diseases. Stanley was appointed Vice Chancellor for Research at Washington University in 2006, serving in that position until he was appointed President of Stony Brook University in New York in 2009, where he served for 10 years. Welcome, President Stanley.
Well, thank you very much, Eduardo, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm really so pleased to help welcome everyone to this year's Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. Community Conversation. And I want to offer a special welcome to our own MSU professor, Dr. Tamora Lomax, today's keynote speaker. I really look forward to your remarks. And special thanks to all of the students who served on the MSU Student MLK Planning Committee. You've done incredible work to organize this virtual MLK Student Leadership Conference and Commemorative March, among other events during this week. And I'm just so proud of your ability to adjust plans to create a safe virtual event that allows our community an opportunity to reflect on the life and legacy of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. So thank you again. Our theme this evening, where do we go from here, chaos or community, is a question posed by Dr. King that is still so relevant today. Dr. King was a courageous leader, striving for creation of a community centered on justice and equality amid deep-rooted challenges in a divided nation. And it is my fervent wish and goal that at these difficult times, that Michigan State be committed to upholding the values Dr. King so eloquently expressed and lived. Michigan State is proud to have hosted Dr. King in the 1960s, and the fact that our then President John Hanna serves as the first chairperson of the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights. And in 1970, Michigan State University named Clifton Wharton Jr. president of the university, making him the first African-American president of a major U.S. research university. We are proud of that history, but we recognize that MSU still needs to do much more today to become a truly inclusive institution of higher education. Our commitment to do more is explicitly expressed in the MSU 2030 Strategic Plan and the DEI implementation strategic framework formulated by the DEI Steering Committee and the Task Forces on Racial Equity. The framework focuses on increasing diversity, ensuring equity, promoting inclusion, and enhancing both outreach and engagement. Much of this work is being spearheaded by Dr. Jabbar Bennett, who is the first Vice President and Chief Diversity Officer for the university. Together, we're working as colleagues to make the university as safe, inclusive, and welcoming as it can be to provide an environment where we can all succeed. To help achieve that objective, Vice President for Public Safety and Chief of Police Marlon Lynch recently announced formation of a Police and Public Safety Advisory Committee. The committee is based on recommendations from the Task Force on Racial Equity and will assist police leaders in setting a new strategic outlook for the department to meet the specific needs of the campus community. And to further support our commitment to being an inclusive and welcoming campus, we've completed a feasibility study for a campus multicultural center, a center that students have requested for decades. The Board of Trustees approved the project for the planning phase in September 21. The center will build on existing programs to promote an inclusive community that meets our diverse student population needs. Among Dr. King's most famous words was his declaration that, quote, of all the forms of inequality, injustice in healthcare is the most shocking and inhumane, end quote. This drives one of the pillars of our strategic plan, and it is at the core of our partnership with the Henry Ford Health System in Detroit, where both of us are going to work to address health disparities head on. We're working together to enhance research, clinical care, and education to allow both institutions to reach their full potential in delivering the highest quality healthcare to all in need across the state of Michigan. In conclusion, I appreciate the efforts of all who share in MSU's commitment to further build an equitable community at MSU and beyond. And I want to congratulate those who will be honored today with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Endowed Scholarship Program Awards. Your work makes a difference here and beyond. Those awards are next on the agenda, so I will conclude with a thank you, and I hope everyone enjoys the program.
Such powerful opening remarks from President Stanley. Thank you, Dr. Stanley, for your continued passion and work towards equity and justice. We appreciate you so much for building community with us today as we honor Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and for continuing to connect and uplift each other through our shared humanity. Hello, everyone. My name is Christine So. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm currently a senior here at Michigan State, pursuing a BA in music with an entrepreneurship minor. As Eduardo said earlier, I am also the Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer, also known as the CDIO, within the Associated Students of the Michigan State University, which is our student government here on campus. In my role, I also get to work closely with the Course and Cops Coalition, as well as campus-wide DEI initiatives. I'm really excited and grateful to be a part of this with you all today. I'd like to thank everyone for joining our webinar today. It is truly an honor to serve as your co-host for this event. I also want to give a special shout out to Audrey Bentley and the Office for Institutional Diversity and Inclusion for making this event happen, as well as all the students, staff, and faculty members involved in the planning and execution of all the wonderful events today. Today, as we transition into our program, I want to remind everyone in the Zoom conversation that we are all DEI change agents on and off campus. And we thank you for the work that you do and for participating in this event. Now, I would like to recognize our 2021-2022 Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Endowed Scholarship Program Award recipient. The Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Endowed Scholarship Program recognizes Michigan State University students who are, through their stewardship, becoming society's leaders by actively engaging in building inclusive communities in ways that fight injustice and promote equality for all on every possible level. Tonight, we are proud to recognize and acknowledge our 2021-2022 MLK Scholarship recipient, Shanawar Lone. Shanawar Lone is a third-year JD and MBA student, a first-generation college student. He has served and been involved in a variety of organizations here at MSU and the greater MSU community. He has served as the president for the Council of Graduate Students, a law representative for the Council of Graduate Students, president and founder of MSU Law Democrats, class senator and fundraising committee member for the Student Bar Association, and has worked as a Barber ambassador, working to provide resources to law students to help them prepare for the bar exam, as well as volunteered with a variety of other nonprofit and charitable causes. Shanawar worked as a law clerk at a law firm for the past 2 summers that focus on civil rights and public interest work. Prior to attending MSU, Shanawar worked and was involved as a community organizer in Oakland County, a fellow for President Obama, and has also served as a representative for the Clinton Global Initiative and was selected as a member for leaders in their 20s and 30s for the Clinton Foundation 2030 program, to name a few. He completed his Bachelor of Arts in International Relations with a minor in Public Relations at Oakland University. Upon graduation, Shanawar plans to work at a law firm focusing on civil rights and public interest areas with a specific focus in sports and entertainment arenas. His future aspirations include private practice and one day serving as the governor of Michigan. Shanawar, would you like to say a few words?
Thank you. Hello, everybody. Thank you, Christine, for this introduction. I first want to thank the donor of this wonderful award. Without them, this scholarship would not be possible. Having this award will help me reach one step closer for starting my legal career, so I can help others, not just through community organizing, as I have been, but through the courts and the legal system. I also want to thank Dean Green and Dean Ferguson of the College of Law, who came out to support me on this special day. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you for those words, Shanawar, and congratulations once again. Please join me in recognizing this amazing student in recognition of their scholarship and outstanding work as agents for freedom and liberation at Michigan State and other communities. We would also like to invite you to donate to the Scholarship Fund. If you are interested in financially supporting the MLK Scholars Program, please feel free to use the link provided on the chat function. The link has also been shared at the website of the Office for Institutional Diversity and Inclusion. We would also like to encourage our students to apply for the 2022-2023 MLK Endowed Scholarships Program. All the pertinent application information can be found on the website of the Office for Institutional Diversity and Inclusion. Now, let me introduce our keynote remarks and conversation moderator, Stratton Lee, a 2-time alumnus of MSU. Stratton has supported our community for 13 years through his role as an academic specialist and service on various university committees. Stratton is the Assistant Director for Undergraduate Programs in the College of Agricultural and Natural Resources and President of the MSU Black Faculty, Staff, and Administrators Association, a community relentlessly moving forward 53 years strong. Please join me in welcoming Stratton Lee, who will introduce and engage in conversation with our keynote speaker, Dr. Tamora Lomax.
Thank you, Christine, for your kind introduction, and good afternoon to everyone that's here with us today. I'm honored to be the moderator for this conversation with our keynote speaker, Dr. Tamora Lomax. Dr. Tamora Lomax is the Foundational Associate Professor of African American and African Studies AAAS at Michigan State University. She received her Ph.D. in 2011 from Vanderbilt University in religion, where she specialized in Black religious history and Black diaspora studies. She also developed expertise in women, gender, and sexuality studies and Black, British, and US Black cultural studies. In 2018, Dr. Lomax published Jezebel Unhinged, Losing the Black Female Body in Religion and Culture with Duke University Press. In addition, she organized and guest edited Black Bodies in Ecstasy, Black Women, the Black Church, and the Politics of Pleasure, a special issue published with Black Theology, an international journal. In 2014, she published Womanist and Black Feminist Responses to Tyler Perry's Cultural Productions with Palgrave Macmillan, a co-authored edited volume with Ron S. Manigault Bryant and Carol B. Duncan. And she is currently at work on a new book, Parenting Against the Patriarchy, Raising Non-Toxic Sons in White Supremacist America with Duke University Press. However, Dr. Lomax isn't solely a writer and researcher. She's a scholar activist. In 2017, she co-organized Our Histories, Our Future, a multi-generational human rights conference at Boston University, which brought together 1960s civil rights and Black Panther Party activists with Black Lives Matter activists. And in 2011, Dr. Lomax co-founded the Feminist Wire, TFW, an online publication committed to feminist, anti-racist, and anti-imperialist social political critique. Her vision is to create space for justice work through critical conversation, exchange, mass mediation, and dynamic, accessible education. Her hope is to bring academic expertise to the streets and vice versa. Since its founding, TFW has published close to 3,000 intersectional and justice-centered scholarly essays, including the original Black Lives Matter Herstory by Alicia Garza in 2014, organized the very first university conference on Black Lives Matter at the University of Arizona, and coordinated various forums on topics such as Black academic women's health, Assata Shakur, Trayvon Martin, disabilities, race, racism, and anti-racism within feminism, and Mumia Abu-Jamal, race, gender, and the carceral state. In addition to online publishing, TFW has a book series with the University of Arizona Press, The Feminist Wire Books, Connecting Feminisms, Race, and Social Justice. I would like to ask you to share questions with me for Dr. Lomax to address at the end of her remarks. I will do my best to address as many questions as possible during the 15-minute question and answer portion of this part of the program. Now, please join me in welcoming Dr. Tamora Lomax.
Thank you for that wonderful introduction. It's always wonderful to hear the things that one has done. So thank you for that. I want to thank Eduardo, Olivo, the Student Planning Committee, and the Council for Racial and Ethnic Minorities for extending this invitation. And to all others in attendance today, thank you for your presence and your interest in Martin Luther King Jr.'s legacy. So King would often say that there are two Americas. One was filled with opportunity, human dignity, prosperity, food, material necessities, education, and freedom. The other, he'd say, was marked by consistent despair, starvation, joblessness, rat-infested slums, dilapidated schools, poverty, and unfreedom. And though the people in these two Americas were geographically close, they were systematically, socially, politically, and economically worlds apart. In the same vein, I'd like to say that there are two kings. On one hand, there is the feared Black Moses, who was assassinated in 1964 after attempting to restructure America in American racism, militarism, and poverty. On the other hand, we have the apolitical dreamer, often reduced to a singular pericope about little Black and white children holding hands. With the two Americas and the two kings in mind, I want to talk a bit today about MLK #1, the man that I refer to as the real king and or the real MLK. This king is the king whose life was taken at 39 years young. More, it is the one that I came to love so much for his righteous indignation that my husband and I named our youngest baby boy after him, Martin Joseph Lomax. So in Black American households, one learns pretty early on who the Black national cultural heroes are. And though I've not done any official surveys, I'm willing to bet that Martin Luther King Jr. sits prominently at the top of the proverbial unwritten list of sacred Black heroes. However, it wasn't until my second year of PhD studies at Vanderbilt University in Nashville, Tennessee, that I encountered the MLK Jr. that exists beyond the thunderous speeches. That year, in particular, I was selected to be a teaching fellow for both Dr. Lewis V. Baldwin, a leading King scholar in the US, and also Reverend James Lawson, the civil rights pioneer who was expelled from Vanderbilt Divinity School in 1960s for his leadership of the Nashville lunch counter sit-in movement. And it was under their tutelage that I came to know King, the Black Moses, the radical, complicated, imperfect, prophetic visionary. This king was shaped by not only the love ethic that he learned growing up in his Southern home, but also by, #1, the political theology of rebellion entrenched in the historic Black church. #2, the philosophy of somebodyness learned from his grandmother. 3, the sense of dignity and mission of Morehouse College in Atlanta, Georgia. And 4, the doctrines on personalism, beloved community, moral right, and real citizenship foundational to his intellectual journey. If we don't know these backgrounds on King, then we do not know Dr. King. So when preparing for today, I pondered all the ways that I might bring all of this together and both honor and humanize the real MLK. In view of this, I zeroed in on King's letter from the Birmingham jail, written in 1963, and the speech Beyond Vietnam, given at the Riverside Church in New York City in 1967, just 1 year before his assassination. When reflecting on these works, it became clear to me that America is grotesquely fascinated with the King of 1963. And my educated guess is that this is because he is in 1963 just the right amount of progression. To be sure, the 1963 MLK is disruptive to the status quo, but yet not too much. And of course, he is at the center of a major movement that's changing some laws and making folks uncomfortable. But his pushing is just far enough. More, the 1963 I Have a King, I Have a Dream King, who would march on Washington just months after writing the letter from the Birmingham jail, was still very hopeful. In King's own words, though the moment was filled with racial humiliation and chaos, this was in fact also a period of great optimism, particularly as Black Americans had just witnessed a solid decade of progress in the South. From the Montgomery bus boycott to the lunch counter sit-in movement in Nashville, to the integration of schools in Little Rock, it appeared that America was making a turn. However, By 1967, King says the dream of 1963 had in fact turned into a nightmare. And the only way to realistically oppose said nightmare was through a radical revolution of American values that would in essence tangibly turn America as we know it upside down. For one, he had been systematically targeted by the FBI's counterintelligence program, whose stated aim during this time, by the way, was to prevent the rise of and respectability of a Black messiah who could unify and electrify Black communities and especially Black youth. Two, 1967 was marked by Black and Brown genocide in both America and Vietnam, respectively. Moreover, King argued that what was happening in Vietnam was a symptom of what was happening in America, as well as a symptom of American colonialism and economic and political nationalism worldwide. Thus, by the time we get to the King of Beyond Vietnam in 1967, we see a very different king. In short, we see a king that is not only willing to unapologetically censure the white supremacist capitalist threat of neocolonial subjection, brutalization, and occupation in America and the world against Black and Brown people, but we also see someone who is calling for a multiracial, multi-ethnic, transnational movement against empiricism, war, racism, economic exploitation, and poverty. A nice way to put it is to say that the King of 1967 had shifted from Southern civil rights to world peace. However, a more honest reading is to say that King of 1967 was emphatically putting his foot on the neck of white supremacist capitalist empire. He believed that America was built on white supremacist capitalist anti-Black racism and unjust laws, and more, that it was the moral duty of the people to resist them through the withdrawal of economic support and nonviolent direct action. To be clear, while the 1963 King emphasized ending the humiliation of legal segregation and the right to vote, the 1967 King wanted more. Specifically, he wanted a progressive democracy and a genuine equity, otherwise known as Black power. And so what does this look like for him? Well, it promoted the cause of all people. It treated every person as an end and never as a means. It believed in the sacredness, dignity, and worth of all persons. And it interpreted the establishment of a socially, politically, and economically more just society as a moral duty for all, to include the people and the administration. Moreover, such a democracy would look, quote unquote, uneasily on the glaring contrast of poverty and wealth with righteous indignation. To this end, King founds the Poor People's Campaign and writes his own economic Bill of Rights, which includes the following: the right of every employable citizen to a decent job, the right of every citizen to a minimum income, the right of a decent house and free choice of neighborhood, the right to an adequate education, the right to participate in the political decision-making process, and the right to the full benefits of modern science and healthcare. This was King's beloved community. It was never the empty promise of interracial handholding. It was always a democratic socialist society that came about through nonviolent, direct confrontation with the status quo. And so, despite the dreamy heroics attributed to him today, which in fact harmfully dehumanize him, the immediate response to Beyond Vietnam was oppositional. America basically said it was okay to share lunch counters, buses, classrooms, and maybe, sort of, kind of, the voting booth. But it was not okay to call out or overthrow the power structure that benefits white people disproportionately and often exclusively. And thus, as history reveals, King was assassinated while standing on the second floor balcony of the Lorraine Motel in Memphis, Tennessee, exactly 1 year after preaching beyond Vietnam. Why? Because he had gone too far. And so, as we celebrate M.O. King today, it is important to first ask, which MLK are we celebrating? But second, it is imperative to pause and note that the prophets for justice typically are not beloved while living. And if we are to be honest about it, they are actually preferred dead. Sadly, King knew this about America, because it is not happenstance that he eulogized himself the night before his assassination in his mountaintop speech in Memphis, Tennessee, when he was heading up the fight for Black sanitation workers. And so, in closing, I want to turn towards two questions that are pivotal to my work as a Black feminist scholar activist of Black religion and culture. The first question is, in the words of Stuart Hall, what sort of moment is this? And the second question is, what is our work today? Hall posits that the moment is a postmodern moment marked by conjuncturalism. That is, a coexistence between new and old worlds, histories, obsessions with difference, violences, and coloniality. And for those thinking the colonial moment is long gone, as Amy Césaire writes in Discourse on Colonialism in 1950, though the official apparatus may have been removed, the political, economic, and cultural links established by the colonial domination still remain. King understood this. He understood that a nation that colonizes, exploits, and segregates with impunity, and more, that justifies each is, as Césaire puts it, a morally diseased nation, and therefore in need of a revolution of values. In fact, King prophesied that the refusal to change would bring about not only destruction, but repetition. And so I'd like for you to ask yourself this question and then answer honestly to yourself. Is today a new day, or are we experiencing repetition? If asking me, here's what I would say. Today, we too live in a neo-colonial moment that celebrates King's caricature while blaming the critical race-centered education that would best explain his resistance towards white supremacy and anti-Black racism. Today, we live in an America where redlining ensures public education remains unequal. Today, Black genocide and brutalization are simply facts of being Black here. Today, race continues to decide who gets healthcare and or who gets exploited for scientific advancement. Today, Black people have to change their name, hair, and voice to get the job they are likely overqualified for. Today, Black parents have to teach our children how not to get shot by the police while teaching them how to drive. Today, Black folks are fighting for the right to breathe, jog, swim, do business, and walk down the street without experiencing unprovoked violence. Today, the American legal system upholds one set of laws for one group and another set of laws for everyone else. Today, Black resistance to unjust laws remains a national threat and may lead to state-sanctioned execution sans due process. Today, the giant triplets, racism, extreme materialism, and militarism maintain the greatest loyalties over and against a more just, beloved community. And today, on this day, on this MLK holiday, we are facing voter suppression as 34 laws have been passed in 19 states over the past year to restrict voting rights, especially for Black folks and people of color. It is ironic that in 1964, King wrote an article for The Nation demanding that the Senate ban the civil rights filibuster because it would suppress Black votes. And in relation to the article, he posited that the men in the Senate were no different than Bull Connor. One used dogs and high-powered hoses, he said, while the others used the filibuster. I say all of this to say that we are in a new year, but we are not in a new day. So then in view of this, I moved to my final question, or my second question, which is, what then is our work today? One, it is to face the truth of America. Two, it is to honestly inquire what is the goal of our work together. Three, if the goal is genuine equity, then the work is to seek genuine social, political, and economic justice. Four, if the goal is not genuine equity, you must admit that you are in fact not a justice worker. Five, if you find that you are in fact a justice worker, or at least desire to be, then the next step is, as Dr. Marita Gilbert suggested recently in her talk on facing boogeymen, or what the horror genre taught me about anti-racist leadership, it is to seriously ask yourself, where does white supremacy live in me, my community, my department, my unit, or my organization, and how does it hinder a shift towards an anti-racist framework? Six, the work requires seeing and valuing every person as a sacred, dignified, and worthy end and never a means. Seven, and relatedly, this work must also hold as truth that a world where Black people are neither prey nor exploited is the key to any kind of reconciliation and or community building. And finally, number 8, the work is to ground our social justice initiatives in inclusive systems of accountability and real tangible outcomes. We don't need a hero for this. We need accountable community workers invested in and committed to the real work of genuine equity. And we must be committed to this work over and against hallowed holidays, fancy slogans, empty promises, idolatrous forms of hope, romantic depictions of progress, and or futile programming. And so, to be quite honest, given my work around the country as a justice seeker and justice speaker, my question for everyone listening today is this: does America and or American institutions, including those like MSU, even want to do the hard work to realize the society King and others imagined? Or is this merely another exercise in political correctness and performative justice and inclusion? I ask this because not only from experience, but because the real work, as Tony K. Barber writes in The Salt Eaters, requires laying our oppressions bare, critical self-reflection, socio-political, spiritual, struggling through deep and murky waters, inner, communal, and political transformation, and then finally doing the painful work of dumping the toxicity. This means there can be no two Americas, there can be no two kings, and in some instances, there can be no two institutions. They have to go. There has to be one. And so, as King once said, though the calling to speak is often a vocation of agony, a time comes when silence is betrayal. And so the time, if we want to do the real work, it is to speak. Thank you.
Wow, I'm going to lead the applause here. I know everyone is muted on the screen, but I imagine there are plenty of applause. You can all drop that in the chat just so that we can see that, and definitely send your thanks. I see in the Q&A area, there's also some thanks for showing the real MLK. Definitely, as you were speaking, There was a lot of points that you shared that I hope people revisit this recording and go through those 8 or so points just to consider that in their lives and really do that work. But also just an appreciation for expanding the view of who Dr. Martin Luther King is as the person, the man, as you said, the prophet that was leading and guiding in these times, and not just the respectable person that's presented in history books, but the full view of who he is and the work, his growth in the work that he's been leading and doing. So allow me to ask a few questions in the Q&A area. If you have some questions, please feel free to put those in, and I will ask as many as I can in the few minutes that we have. So our first question, Dr. Lomax says, the fear of the Black Messiah is still strong today. Are there any people you see who are picking up the baton of Dr. King to electrify young people of color?
Yeah, it's always, hard when you start naming names because you don't want to forget anyone. But the person that comes to mind immediately, there are several, I should say, and we need several. But the person that comes to mind that is truly picking up the work of Dr. King is the Reverend William Barber. He is, I believe he's out of North Carolina. If you don't know his work, please Google him. He is a phenomenon, to watch. He is someone who has given his life and is given his life and has really taken up the baton of the Poor People's Campaign. I mean, he's organizing currently across racial, international, ethnic lines in light of poverty. He is bringing people together. He obviously has a lens for, racial, socioeconomic rights, but he is really bringing folks together to focus particularly on poverty. And so thus picking up on Dr. King's, where Dr. King left off. Unfortunately, when you have a Black Messiah like Dr. King, the movement kind of falters when they die for whatever reason, whether it's by natural causes or, as in Dr. King's case, assassination. And so that's kind of what happened, unfortunately. But Reverend William Barber is definitely one to watch and whose work to participate in.
Thank you. And I see people in the chat agreeing and dropping in links and everything. So definitely, if you're unfamiliar with his work, please check him out. The second question I have, Dr. Lomax says, the fear of critical race theory has been a targeted approach to drown the truth about this country's white supremacist ways. Do you think the polite sound bites from Dr. King's speeches are spread by those continuing to rob us of equality out of fear about the truth of the real King radicalizing us?
I mean, I want to say, first of all, that the whitewashed King is really this kind of production of corporate interests, right? To say that we're doing good work, but only so far. And here's the thing, King was so prophetic that he had already saw this coming. He had already named this. He actually called it white backlash, what we call today white fragility. And so what he says is that this is a new name. He says the white backlash for an old phenomena. Ultimately, there's always been this racial ambivalence, this vacillation of white America on the issue of racial justice. It's always existed, so it is a continuation. And he said that there were many people who supported the folks in Selma and Birmingham, right? And they were really outraged by what they saw in media in terms of the extremist behavior towards Black folks and other folks who were activists, right? They're really outraged by that. But what he learned by 1967 was that these same folks were not really committed in any real way to genuine equity. When he began talking about getting into capitalism and actually turning over the power structure, he realized that folks were only willing to go so far, right? As he said, it was much easier to integrate lunch counters and buses and all of that than it was to guarantee an annual income and or get rid of poverty, right? Folks weren't really interested in genuine forms of integration, which meant that America would also have genuine forms of opportunity. And so we get these, very different kings, but also we get this moment. We're in a moment of repetition. And so in this moment of repetition, you have folks who are honoring Dr. King on today, who are simultaneously making sure that Black and other folks can't vote, right? And so are making sure that critical race theory isn't taught in schools. First of all, let's be honest. Critical race theory is not being taught in K through 12. Like that, let's just be, honest about the reality. That was definitely a part of a conservative platform to get at something else, right? But here, since the question is on the table, let's say just anything, teaching race would be a part of quote unquote critical race theory. Any type of critical, discussion on race is a part of critical race theory. What you have is folks who are only willing to go so far. People who understand themselves to be workers, in a justice movement, or to be, kind of liberal in some sort of way, they're actually willing to go so far. These are the people that King talked about in the 1960s. And so you have to ask, people, or I would say to white allies in social movement, you have to ask, which king are you, interested in? Which one, whose work are you interested in? Because you can't be a supporter of King or King Holiday and not be a supporter of critical race theory, which is actually a legal term, right? And so you have to ask, for those people, what are you willing to sacrifice? Are you willing to sacrifice entitlement? Are you willing to sacrifice the benefits of white fragility and innocence? Are you willing to give that up? And I think a lot of times what we are finding right now is that the answer, even to the most liberal, is often no. That's what Dr. King found. Most people were not willing to actually give anything up.
Wow, thank you. So I have another question here. Of course, it just moved. One second. Okay, so Dr. Lomax, will you please talk about the danger organized religion can present to racial and social justice?
The danger that organized, so it's important to make some distinctions. Obviously, we know that, and I have a whole article, it hasn't come out yet, it's coming out, that looks at Black Lives Matters and the church, and how there is, particularly in the historical Black church, there is a history of radical rebellion. But by the time we get past the civil rights movement, we see a bit of that radical rebellious theology weaning out towards a kind of American nationalism, but also a capitalistic prosperity gospel that we particularly see towards the 90s. And as we see this shift, there is an emphasis less so on radical social movement, but instead on personal sin, right? So it's on respectability, it's on sexism, it's on patriarchy, right? So you have organized, particularly the Black church I'm talking about, and then I want to say a word on white evangelicalism, which is what King attacked, and which are very distinct. The theologies are distinct, the histories are distinct, but I want to make these distinctions. So you have the Black church becoming this entity, and King was a part of this. Unfortunately, when I talk about his complexities and his imperfections, I want to talk about how King was also a part of the patriarchy. And you have the Black church focusing on more so like personal sin, like, don't smoke, don't dance. And actually King was against that part, but he was a part of the patriarchy. And so you have the Black church, not all, because obviously William Barber, there are many others were actually very radical and leading this movement. you have aspects of the Black church, even today, not always being a help to Black social movement because of its politics of respectability. Simultaneously, however, it is important to note that without the Black church, there is no Black social movement. There is no other Black religious entity that is as central to social movement, to Black social movement in America as the Black church. You cannot talk about Black people or Black social movement and not understand the work and role specifically more than any other religion or spirituality or faith tradition than the Black church. So you have to kind of hold those things in tension. Now, where I want to say on the other hand, though, you have a white evangelicalism. And this is what King critiques actually in the letter from the Birmingham jail. He's very upset with, and I think shocked, interestingly. He's shocked by the negligence of white evangelical churches and pastors who actually support white supremacy. They actually support Bull Connor. They actually support the racism and the violences that are happening towards Black people in America. And so again, we get back to this point of if we don't fix America, we're at this point of repetition and destruction. And so what have we seen, right? What have we seen in the last 10 years? Particularly if we look at the 45th president and the support from white evangelicals. That was, if you look at the statistics, his major voting bloc was white evangelicals. And so why is that? You even had one, I remember watching a video of Pat Robertson from the 700 Clubs saying that the 45th president was in fact the second coming of the second coming of Jesus, right? And so that's a very interesting thing to say, that a person who has built a political platform on Make America Great Again, if you understand Reagan's Make America Great, then you understand that 45's Make America Great Again meant to do exactly what King was against. And that was to take resources from the poor in order to make the wealthy richer. And so here you have these different aspects of religion. And I want to, as I bring, I want to separate the critiques between organized religion in terms of talking about white evangelicalism, because specifically we are talking about Christianity. I want to make a distinction between talking about white evangelicalism and the radical theology of the Black church that sometimes doesn't always get it right. Those are two very distinct things.
All right, thank you. So just with time, I'm going to try to combine a few of these questions, which also lead to the same thing. So recognizing that we're in America that has lacked to distribute resources equitably. And it seems like there's an unwillingness to truly be inclusive, and recognizing that there are young people and students and others that are ready and willing to fight. What are some things that we can do to get started if people are early in their process of this freedom fight, or that we need to continue to do, or maybe even stop doing to move forward?
To be honest with you, the push forward, I am not King. I am a justice worker. And in 2021, I understand he wasn't hopeless, but he was distraught. And I understand that distraught. I understand being at the point where you really have to ask, do the people really want to do this work? Do they really intend to do this work? And here's the thing, here's where I draw my strength and where I think others may also. And that is, I think about the ancestors brought over to America in chains. And I think about how they persevered when freedom was nowhere in sight. They still saw a freedom for them. And it was their faith. And I'm not saying that all of Americans are, faithful people because they're not. I'm not saying that all of Americans are spiritual people because they're not. I'm not saying that all of Americans believe in something, or all of us here believe in something greater, because perhaps we don't, but we better. We better believe in something greater, whatever that may be. It does not have to be, believe in your grandmother, believe in your ancestor, because it is the ancestors I have found that really helped to push me forward. There was a period, I think it was 2019. 2020, where for the first time in my life, and I write about this as well, where I had felt hopeless. I have never, I'm a PK, I'm a pastor's wife. I am, was born in a Christian household. And so I've always been a very faithful person, even though as a religious scholar, my work is not necessarily about faith. It is about this kind of critical reading of religiosity. But I had gotten to a point where I was feeling hopeless. America was on fire. We were in a pandemic. George Floyd had been killed in front of us. The video was on rotate. In our household, it seemed combustible. My kids we have two sons, one at Morehouse College, one at Michigan State. And our sons were spiraling out. It was hot. I mean, there was to me no end in sight in terms of the turmoil and the chaos. And quite frankly, it was my son, my oldest son, who is the student at Morehouse, who dragged us out in a pandemic to protest, literally risking our lives. And it was in that protest that I remembered the ancestors. And I remembered how the ancestors pushed forward regardless. They didn't see freedom. It wasn't before them, but they believed it. And so they pushed forward. And so to me, that's where I found power, is in the pushing forward, regardless of what you can see and regardless of what is in front of you. And the thing about the ancestors, in terms of their faith, and again, everybody may not have a faith system, but in terms of their spirituality, and specifically the African spiritualities that they brought over with them, the ancestors said in their writings, I spent a lot of time reading slave narratives, and what they said is that they had to have some sort of spirituality so that their minds, so that their psychic power would never be bound up with their bodies. And so for me and to others, I say to you that you've got to find some sort of outlet or psychic power so that your mind on freedom is never bound up with your body. And now I do think about how the ancestors who marched with Dr. King, they used to sing those songs. And yes, there were Christian songs, but they were also social political songs where they were talking about freedom. And they would say how they had their mind stayed on freedom. And the thing is that you have to have your mind stayed on freedom, regardless of what your social political context is.
Well, Dr. Lomax, I just want to again thank you for your words, your remarks, the passion that you had behind this, that it's something that I believe we can all see and feel in a palpable way, that this is a part of who you are and the work that you do. So I just, again, lead some applause and thanking you for this. And again, in the chat, we see lots of words of thanks and appreciation. As you were talking, again, just in closing, for me, it just takes me back to the concept of love.
Yes.
That in love, we will do what is necessary for one another. Mm-hmm. I think about, as you said, the ancestors, that someone's ancestor was a part of the Underground Railroad and said, I'm willing to give up my life and sacrifice what I have so that someone else could be free. I think about love, that my ancestors were able to walk and march and protest and put their lives in danger in such a way that not for themselves necessarily, that they would experience the fullness of it, but that I would have a little more aspect of freedom and life and liberty in my experience. I think about the love that we all have that do this work, that we fight for that next generation, and we're always thinking ahead, because while we may not receive it today, we want that rising generation to have it, to see it, to experience and receive that fullness that is there. So it's such a beautiful day. It's such a beautiful time to hear your remarks and your words, because I hope it encourages everyone to see that we do have a cost that we have to pay for all of us to be free. And that in doing that, we will actually be to the better. We will be a better community, a better people, a better campus, that we will actually give and do and live lives in a way that will benefit each other and not be so focused on self, but on the community. So thank you so much. Now I want to take this moment to hand things over to Eduardo, who will introduce our next speaker. And again, I thank you all for this time.
Thank you so much, Stratton. Please join me in another virtual round of applause to Dr. Lomax for her so inspiring, so moving and insightful remarks and comments. You know, Dr. Kimberly Crenshaw wrote a piece that was published today at the LAtimes.com, where they poignantly indicated that Dr. King was a critical race theorist before there was a name for it. So I so much appreciate Dr. Lomax for reminding us that Dr. King's work went far beyond advocating for unity and peace, but it also thoughtfully unpacked, you know, how to address the structural inequities in our society, and also for pointing out that it is our responsibility, all of us, responsibility to carry his legacy forward in its totality. So thank you, Dr. Lomax, again, for such an inspiring keynote remarks that you did today for us. Now, I have the honor of introducing the MSU Vice President and Chief Diversity Officer, Dr. Jabbar Bennett, Ph.D. Jabbar R. Bennett is MSU's Vice President and Chief Diversity Officer. Bennett works to advance MSU's diversity, equity, and inclusion strategic priorities, along with staff in the Office for Institutional Diversity and Inclusion, and partnership among senior executives, deans, faculty, staff, students, alumni. Bennett is also a professor of medicine in the College of Human Medicine. Prior to joining MSU in December 2020, Bennett served as the inaugural Associate Provost for Diversity and Inclusion and Chief Diversity Officer at Northwestern University. Previously, he worked as Associate Dean of the Grad School and Associate Dean for Diversity in the Division of Biology and Medicine at Brown University. Bennett has held administrative appointments at Brigham and Women's Hospital, Harvard Medical School, and United Way of Massachusetts Bay and Merrimack Valley. He has served on the faculty at Harvard, Brown, and Northwestern. Bennett received a BS in biology, a minor in Spanish from North Carolina Agricultural and Technical State University, and earned a PhD in biomedical sciences from Meharry Medical College. Bennett completed postdoctoral research training at Harvard Medical School and is an alumnus of the Harvard University Administrative Fellows Program and Massachusetts Education Policy Fellowship Program. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Bennett to this space.
Thank you so much, Eduardo, and greetings, everyone. As you heard, my name is Jabbar Bennett, and I serve as the Vice President and Chief Diversity Officer here at Michigan State. And it's truly a pleasure to be here, and thank you for the invitation. And thank you to Dr. Tamora Lomax for that grounding, as well as reflective and forward-thinking keynote, marking Michigan State University's 42nd annual Martin Luther King Jr. commemorative celebration. Your words resonated with me and certainly suggest a tenor in which to approach our work in the coming year to achieve what you called genuine equity. In particular, I appreciated your comments relating to the two notions of America and the divide between them, as well as the idea of two kings, MLK number one, the real king, or the real MLK? And finally, the two very poignant questions you posed towards the end of your talk related to what sort of moment is this and what is our work today? I challenge everyone here to ponder these notions and queries as well and determine what your own answers are or should be. It was almost 57 years ago, on February 11th, 1965, when Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. visited our campus, and he addressed an overflowing auditorium of nearly 4,000 students. Dr. King came to support the Student Enrichment Program, stressing Michigan State's social obligations and appealing to the new idealism of our generation, referring to the students of that day. Just 3 years later, in 1968, the first iteration of what would become today's Office for Institutional Diversity and Inclusion was established. And if this name doesn't sound familiar to you, it's because it was officially launched today, almost and surely most appropriately on the MLK holiday. For more than 50 years, Michigan State has worked to provide central support for the recruitment, retention, and advancement of students, faculty, and staff who are members of underrepresented groups. Today's Office for Institutional Diversity and Inclusion recognizes Michigan State's and realizes Michigan State's commitment to prioritize this crucial work on behalf of all Spartans. So I was beginning to reflect on the theme, where do we go from here, chaos or community? And I'm sobered by the acknowledgement that we haven't done enough and heartened by the strength, resilience, and hope of this community. Now, please allow me to share a few reflections and offer some thanks. As you heard before, I joined Michigan State back in December 2020. Since that time, I've had the opportunity to meet many of you, including students, staff, faculty, alumni, and community partners. I've learned about the decades-long work that numerous individuals and groups have contributed toward advancing diversity, equity, and inclusion on our campus. And I understand the significance of the current moment, which is a result of previous and ongoing advocacy, activism, and allyship. I humbly express my gratitude to those who have turned the soil, planted the seeds, and tended the garden of hope, where we have begun to see blooms and in some cases, the actual fruit of our labor. Thank you, Dr. Wanda Lipscomb and Dr. Luis Garcia, for leading the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Steering Committee, and to members of the group that helped to chart our path forward, and to the MLK Planning Committee and Student Subcommittee. Thank you for your tireless efforts to organize and execute this event, along with the Student Leadership Conference and Commemorative March, and making the pivot to a virtual format. I left off and wanted to be sure that you heard me congratulating this year's recipient of the MLK Endowed Scholarship once again, Jabbar R from the College of Law. And I also have to recognize Eduardo, Olivo, and Karen Stowell from Residence Education and Housing Services, along with Bethany and the REHS Communications team for all of your assistance. And thank you, Stratton, for moderating today's discussion. Thanks to Lynn Lammers from my team for writing and preparing the theatrical performance with alumnus Greg Hayes. And thank you to Henry Mochita, also from my office, who worked with the communicators across campus to help spread the word about this year's programming. And thank you to the Kellogg Hotel and Conference Center team for helping prepare us for an in-person gathering. We acknowledge and appreciate your partnership and understanding as we transition to a virtual format. And before my final closing remarks, I would like to offer a special recognition to an amazing individual that has been at the helm of the MLK commemorative celebration planning efforts for many years. I've gotten to know her over the past year as she is a member of my team. And I have truly benefited from her wisdom and sage advice as I navigate my own role in advancing this critical work at such a crucial time in our institution's trajectory and nation's history. Since joining Michigan State in 1972, She has been working diligently to help advance and oversee our compliance-related responsibilities, as well as offer key programming like the MLK commemoration to the entire campus community. So please help me virtually celebrate Audrey Bentley, Senior Coordinator for Community Outreach, for 50 years of service with grace and excellence to the entire Michigan State University family. And while you do that virtually, I'll encourage you to reach out to Audrey as well. And I will say in closing that I encourage all of us to reflect upon what we heard today, and there's Audrey, and commit to taking intentional action tomorrow and beyond. Please join other planned MLK events throughout the week as we continue to be challenged, enlightened, affirmed, and inspired. And again, thank you for inviting me to join you today. And Christine and Eduardo, back to you.
Thank you, Dr. Bennett. And yes, I mean, kudos and a big round of applause for Audrey, who has been a mentor and a mover and a shaker in this university for so long. And I think somebody who has really made such a tremendous impact on the lives of so many with her work, usually behind the stage, you know, is that type of work that diligently permeates through different spheres of influence. And, you know, I am always in awe of Audrey's wit and ability really to bring the perspectives that sometimes have helped me personally as I move forward with the work here at Michigan State University. So very well deserved recognition for Audrey. And now as we close, I also would like to recognize the MLK Planning Committee members, again, led by the one and only Audrey in this process. Karen Stowell from REHS, the REHS communication staff, my co-host, Christine So, and the students who put so much time and effort into creating this wonderful week of events. And lastly, I would also like to encourage those who are students to apply for the 22-23 MLK Endowed Scholarship. Application can be found on the Office for Institutional Diversity and Inclusion website. And to anyone in the room who has donated, or in this space, who has donated to the Martin Luther King Endowed Scholarship Fund, from the bottom of my heart, our community, the past and the future scholars, thank you. We're very, very grateful for your support. Now, in closing this event, let me just hand this over to Christine.
Before I close this today, Audrey, would you be open to saying a few words? It doesn't have to be long.
I'll make it very brief. Thank you for the opportunity, Christine. Can everyone hear me? Okay. Thank you all so much for attending this wonderful program. I mean, I have to thank Eduardo, Christine, all of you that played a key role in pivoting from the in-person event, which I knew took a lot of many weeks of hard work to just turn on a dime, so to speak, to make this a virtual event. It's been awesome. I have to thank all of the people that Dr. Jabbar Bennett thanked before me, but I would also want to give a special thanks to Dr. Lomax. She has truly inspired me, giving me a lot more to think about, and a lot more work that I feel that I need to do. So thank you for that. And I hope everyone has enjoyed this. I don't know how we'll be doing this next year, but we have demonstrated that no matter what we're confronted with, it doesn't stop us. We continue to move forward. So thank you again.
Thank you so much, Audrey. So let me close by reminding all of you that it is through you all and us as individuals and as a collective that hope still exists to drive out the darkness with light and love. With the love and support of everyone in this room and in honoring the activists and dissenters and freedom fighters like John Lewis, we must try to embody their spirit and resolve as we continue to carry and build upon their legacies. Together, we have the collective capacity to use our voice, and through our actions, we can resist and fight against white supremacy, patriarchy, homophobia, poverty, transphobia, Islamophobia, ableism, ageism, anti-Semitism, and more. Let today be a reminder that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere, and that it is up to us to drive away the darkness with our light and love. Thank you for spending some time with us today, and have a great year. Go Green.